We now come to the Song of Solomon. The Jewish Midrash calls it the most praiseworthy, most excellent, most highly treasured among the songs. In 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 32, we learn that Solomon wrote 1,005 songs, and the full title, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, indicates that this song is the best among his musical works. Along with Ruth, Esther, Ecclesiastes, and Lamentations, the Song of Solomon is included among the Old Testament books of the Megilloth, or 5 scrolls, and it is read by the Jews at Passover. Also, Jewish tradition has it that Solomon wrote the song in his youth, the book of Proverbs in his prime, and Ecclesiastes after he had grown weary of this world. Now, this is probably the most difficult and mysterious book in the entire Bible. A cursory glance at the song's history of interpretation reveals a diversity of opinion, unequaled in the study of any other biblical work. For example, it has been interpreted as an allegory, a drama involving 2 or 3 main characters, a collection of Syrian wedding songs, a collection of pagan fertility cult liturgies, an anthology of disconnected songs extolling human love, an allegorical picture of the love of God for Israel, and an allegory of Christ's love for his bride, the church. Let me be clear. The Song of Solomon nowhere gives an interpreter the suggestion that it should be understood as an allegory, so I do not hold to the allegorical school of interpretation. It is my view that the purpose of the book is to exalt human love and marriage, and it parallels and enhances other portions of Scripture which portray God's plan for marriage, including the beauty and sanctity of sexual intimacy between husband and wife. It stands alongside other Scripture passages which expand on this theme, such as Genesis 2:24, Proverbs chapter 5, verses 15 through 23, 1 Corinthians 7, verses 1 through 5, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33, Colossians chapter 3, verses 18 and 19, and 1 Peter 3, verses 1 through 7. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4 captures the heart of this song. It says, "Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge." Now, let me also say that I would not quarrel with those who say that embedded in this true story of human love and marriage is a beautiful picture of the love of Christ for the church, or even for Israel. But I believe that is an application and not the interpretation. So, though at first it may seem strange for God to have included in the biblical canon a book endorsing the beauty and purity of marital love, on reflection, it is not surprising at all. God created man and woman and established and sanctioned marriage. See Genesis 1, verse 27, and chapter 2, verse 24. Since the world views sex so sordidly and perverts and exploits it so persistently, and since so many marriages are crumbling because of lack of love, commitment, and devotion, it is advantageous to have a book in the Bible that gives God's endorsement of marital love as wholesome and pure. Now, as I have already stated, the book was written by King Solomon, and he is referred to by name 7 times in the book. Chapter 1, verse 1 and verse 5, chapter 3, verses 7, 9, and 11, and chapter 8, verses 11 and 12. He is also referred to as the King. Chapter 1, verse 4 and verse 12, chapter 3, verse 9 and 11, and chapter 7, verse 5. Some wonder how Solomon could be the author of a book that extols faithfulness in marriage when he was so unfaithful, having 700 wives and 300 concubines. See 1 Kings 11, verse 3. Perhaps the answer is that the Shulamite maiden whom he married was his first wife. If so, then the book may have been written soon after his marriage, before he fell into the sin of polygamy and concubinage. Now, two people dominate the dramatic love song: Solomon and the Shulamite maiden. Other groups featured are the daughters of Jerusalem, the Shulamite brothers, and Solomon's friends. The setting combines both rural and urban scenes: the hill country, where the Shulamite lived, and Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and where Solomon's throne was located. Many interpreters say that the book is an anthology, a collection of love songs that have no connections and that teach no lessons. That is false. The same characters are seen throughout the book. Similar expressions and figures of speech are used throughout the book, and the progression in the subject matter points to a single work, not an anthology. The book moves logically from courtship, chapter 1 verse 2 to chapter 3 verse 5, to the wedding night, chapter 3 verse 6 to chapter 5 verse 1, to maturation in marriage, chapter 5 verse 2 to chapter 8 verse 4. So taken at face value and interpreted in the normal historical sense, this song depicts reality, and it expands on the ancient marriage instructions of Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, thus providing spiritual music for a lifetime of marital harmony. It is given by God to demonstrate his intention for the romance and loveliness of marriage, the most precious of human relations. So, here's the outline. The title, chapter 1 verse 1. The courtship, chapter 1 verse 2 to chapter 3 verse 5. The wedding, chapter 3 verse 6 to chapter 5 verse 1. The maturation of marriage, chapter 5 verse 2 to chapter 8 verse 4. The conclusion, chapter 8 verses 5 through 7. And the epilogue, chapter 8 verses 8 through 14. Let me give just a brief summary of each section. First, the courtship. This section, chapter 1 verse 2 to chapter 3 verse 5, contrasts sharply with the other two major sections. Though this section abounds with expressions of sexual desire, great sexual restraint is exercised by the lovers. However, after the wedding procession in chapter 3 verses 6 through 11, there is a notable absence of sexual restraint in the song. So, this section points up the fact that in romantic courtship, restraint ought to be observed. Now, here in chapter 1, verses 2 through 11, we have the expressions of longing, insecurity, and praise. From verse 12 of chapter 1 until verse 5 of chapter 3, we have the growth of love and its intensity. The next section, the wedding, chapter 3 verse 6 to chapter 5 verse 1. In verses 6 through 11 of chapter 3, we have the wedding procession, and from chapter 4 verse 1 to chapter 5 verse 1, we're given details of the wedding night. In the next section, chapter 5 verse 2 to chapter 8 verse 4, we have the maturation of marriage. Here we see the growth of the couple's marriage. The intimacy, joy, and physical desire of their wedding night did not fade, as is often common in many marriages. They nourished their life together so that the joy of their married life increased, rather than decreased. This does not suggest, however, that they did not encounter problems potentially harmful to their relationship. This section opens with the problem of indifference and offers a model for the successful resolution of a serious marital problem. In the next section, chapter 8, verses 5 through 7, we have the conclusion, the nature and power of love. This section sums up the message of the Song of Solomon with an enigmatic picture of love and a following explanation. Finally, the epilogue, how love began, chapter 8, verses 8 through 14. Verses 8 through 12 are a flashback explaining the protection of the Shulamite by her older brothers when she was young, and her subsequent initial meeting with Solomon. The song concludes in verses 13 and 14 with statements that show that the couple's love has not lost its intensity. So, as I stated in my opening remarks, this is a very difficult and mysterious book, and several different interpretations have been given by scholars. But after studying its content and reading several commentaries by godly teachers, I am convinced that this is about human love and marriage, and I must give credit to Mr. Jack S. Deere, whose commentary on the Song of Solomon was extremely enlightening, and so much so that I used a great deal of his material for this study. Now, in our next study, we will begin our journey through the prophets, and we will look at the man they call the Prince of the Old Testament prophets. There is much prophecy in our next book, and some of them are the most well-known, having to do with our blessed Lord's virgin birth, life, sacrificial death, and millennial reign on this earth. We will be climbing the Mount Everest of the prophets in our next study. So, our next stop, the book of Isaiah.